Hey guys, let's talk about last night's episode of Sleepy Hollow. And it was bound to happen. We were going to at least have one episode that wasn't a home run straight out of the ballpark, and that was last night's episode. I mean, for the most part, it was still a good episode, but there were some bits and pieces in this that felt a little bit rushed to me. We've always loved this show because of the chemistry between Ichabod and Abby, as well as the rich mythology that the show brings. But last night, for whatever reason, everything felt a little bit rushed. We found out last week that Ichabod had a son, and we found out in this week's episode that when his wife Katrina gave birth to the son, she had to then abandon him, and she gave their baby over to Grace, who is Abby's ancestor. And that was a really nice reveal to know that they were the ones, her and her husband were the ones that raised the baby. But then we quickly found out that he inherited Katrina's powers. And when he would cry and go into a fit of rage, apparently he was able to burn a house down. And he did just that. And that was, of course, including the parents that were raising him. So we find out that Abby's ancestor died in the fire. And later on, this Ichabod's son, Jeremy, had a really hard time. And when Katrina first gave birth to her son, she gave him this, a doll, which sort of became his protector. And he was somehow able to conjure that up into what was now called a golem. And he pretty much protected him. He didn't have a father. He didn't have anybody to look out for him. And so this doll, which turned into Golem, ended up being that protector, and it would kill and hurt anybody that got in its way. And Katrina's coven of witches pretty much were upset with her for protecting Ichabod and putting the hex on him, which ultimately saved his life 200 years ago. So they decided to banish her to purgatory. And of course, Jeremy was left with no parents. And the Golem had pretty much set out to destroy these witches because they hurt Jeremy in such a huge way. So now he had no parents, and Golem was his protector. So we find out that these witches are still alive and that they are, following this like circus all over the place. And so Abby and Ichabod are able to track him down. How are they able to do this? Well, we get reintroduced to the Sin Eater. And that's right, Henry Parrish returns, and it's awesome because he's such a great addition to the show. And we all thought that all he could do was take away your sins, but apparently he can help you go between realms as well. So he, pretty much like has to kind of strangle Ichabod to get him to go into this trance, which sends him into purgatory. So he ends up meeting up with Katrina, and she explains this whole backstory as to the fact that she didn't know that she was pregnant when she had put this curse or this spell on Ichabod. And once she did have the baby, she had to abandon him, and she had no idea whether he was alive or dead. And so it's a pretty sad and tragic episode in terms of, Ichabod finding out that he has a son, then finding out that his son was pretty much like possessed, was with these witches' powers, and then that he was ultimately, his heart was stopped by these witches and he was buried in order to save everybody from this golem that was out there hurting everybody. And, Ichabod had to go through all these emotions through this episode, and it was kind of tough to see. And ultimately, they end up finding the witches, they end up taking down the golem, and Ichabod's blood is the only thing that can stop it, and he ends up killing the golem and ultimately telling him, you can finally be at rest. Jeremy is gone, and I thank you for protecting him all these years when I couldn't. It's kind of sad. But the one thing that this episode really was lacking was a lot of punch. So it felt a little bit slow. It also felt a little bit rushed, and sort of off of their mark, which we're used to, the episode really being full of everything, a little bit of charm, a little bit of humor, some great mythology. And this one just felt like it was just like throwing everything at us. And I don't know if it really worked to their show's advantage, but that's okay because, everything else, the chemistry between Abby and Ichabod is always great. The only thing I'm a little worried about is that Abby was sort of a backseat again in this episode, and she's been a backseat in the last few. And we don't want it to seem like Abby is his sidekick, but more like they're partners. And I felt like we're starting to go a little bit back. Even, Henry had some really great scenes with Ichabod, but not so much with Abby. And they're a duo. One isn't really supposed to outshine the other, because we all know that Abby had her own run-in with Moloch in the back in the day, and she's equally a part of this whole mythology as Ichabod is, and it's sort of like one doesn't work without the other. So that was pretty much the A storyline this week. And of course, we got some hilarious moments between Ichabod and Abby, talking about Christmas. And, that is one of the things that this show does really well. And they get the humor down pat. Now, the B storyline that was going on was with Frank Irving, and he went to visit his daughter and ex-wife back in New York. And, he at the top of the episode, he goes to his old church and he's talking to the priest, and he's pretty much asking him like about the mythology of being a follower, and what happens if you are, the two watchmen, or, people that are pretty much the chosen ones, and what happens if you're a follower of them. And, he's pretty much like, you're all pretty much going to die for the cause, and you're martyrs, and you're going to, sacrifice your lives for the good of all others. And it's kind of like, great. Give me some good news, please. And so that was an interesting scene there at the church. And then we also got to see him reconnect with his daughter, who is absolutely adorable. And she's in the wheelchair, and we found out in this episode that she got hit by a car. And, she is obviously showing that she is a very tough girl, and it looks like she's not giving up, like maybe on the chance of maybe walking again. It's, interesting to see where the storyline is going to go. But then there was this other part where he went to go get I think a hot dog or something, or ice cream, and this man, all of a sudden his eyes turn white, and he says something like, is your daughter willing to protect her soul, or what are you going to be able to do for your daughter's soul, or something like that. And and then Irving freaks out and grabs him, and then he by accident knocks him into this woman, and then whatever was possessing the man jumped into the woman. So I thought that was kind of cool, that obviously there's some thing going on where they're a little bit possessed by something that's going on, and it sounds like it's not going to be a good thing. So this was pretty much, and I don't really want to say it was the mid-season finale, because this is episode 10, and they're only doing 13 episodes, and it's going to go on its winter break, and then they're going to come back with 3 episodes to conclude the season. But so far we've had 9 out of 10 really great episodes. This one was a bit of a misstep, but I'm not holding that against the show, because the show is very good, and it has been one of the biggest surprise hits of the new fall season. So, even though it was not a great episode, it was still great. And we still found out like good information that revolved around Ichabod's backstory and Katrina. And ultimately, at the very end, Moloch kind of summons Ichabod, and he goes into this, that world where he can see Moloch, and he pretty much gives him a warning that he's coming for Abby's soul, and you're going to be the one that delivers it to me. And so it's kind of like, really? Like, what? So now that is sort of our big cliffhanger for next episode. And, when Ichabod kind of comes to, he's on the ground in the police station, and Abby comes in, and she's like, what happened? And he tells her, pretty much that Moloch said that I'm going to deliver your soul to him. And he looks terrified. So I can't wait to see what happens when the show returns after the Christmas break. Again, not 2 thumbs up from me this week, but it was still a good episode. All right, guys, that has been my review of Sleepy Hollow. I'll see you after the break. All right, bye.